he's probably going to be a rocket scientist. But he was nonverbal. He couldn't speak, would not speak, did not speak for the first 5 years of his life. And his mom and dad, they were thinking, this is it. If we can't get some help here, we're going to have to institutionalize him. Now, he's 9 years old now, and he's working men's puzzles while he's waiting. But the little boy was healed. Mom and dad thought it's over. He was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome with autistic tendencies. But he sent me a letter, this 9-year-old boy sent me a letter a few days ago. And he starts, his printing. He said, Brother Don, I just want to tell you I'm okay. And I know how to throw a football. And he's giving me the tips on how to throw a football. He said, you let it roll off your fingers. You kind of have to put the right touch on it. Let it roll off your fingers. And he said, by the way, I'm not in special needs classes anymore. I'm in regular school. His parents had said, this is it. I guess he thought, one of the things he told me when I was first talking to him, he said, I'm normal. I said, I know it. But apparently he'd been told that or he had heard that conversation. But that was his first defense. I'm normal. Of course he's normal. But somehow through generational curse, I don't know how those things happen. All I know is he's healed today. Genuinely healed today. It ain't over when it's over. And so Jesus said, let's go to your house. And they go back to this ruler's house. And the little girl, I think the Bible says she's 12 years old, was laying on the couch, the bed, and she was dead. The coroner had already been there. Doctors had already been there. They had already declared she's dead. There were professional mourners. If you read about the Jewish culture, that's what they do. They just saw somebody's dead. Oh, they were mourning. And Jesus and Peter, James, and John came in. That's interesting too. When you need some help, when you need the Holy Spirit and God's supernatural power, you need to surround yourself with people who know how to pray, people who know how to believe. And so he ran the doubters off. He told all those people, he said, you're going to have to leave. He said, oh, she's dead. You can't help her. She's dead. He said, y'all going to have to go. But he took with him Peter, James, and John. People who believed in him, people who supported him, people who loved him, people who knew how to pray. He said, y'all come back here with me. They go back to the place for the little girl. They said, you know what he did? He just spoke. He said, little girl, I say unto you, arise. It ain't over. This ain't it. And she sat up. I mean, do you know, I preached my funeral the other day. Jerry's eyebrows just popped up. I did. Ronnie knows about this. Tommy Thomas videoed it for me. I don't mean to make light of this, but this is not a big deal for me, really. I mean, I don't know if it's going to happen in 15 years or what, but I'm not anxious about it. So I went to this casket place. Wish I could have seen that lady. And I said, could I just borrow a casket? I said, I'll rent it, whatever I need to do, but and she's like, who are you? I talked to her for a minute. I had on a TCU shirt. She graduated from TCU. That was a big deal. She said, oh, did you go to TCU? I said, no, I'm just a TCU fan. And she said, well, now tell me again what you want to do. I said, I just want to lay in it and let somebody take my picture. And then I'm going to preach my funeral, and it's going to be all edited together. And she said, can you come back? Anyway, her name's Nancy, and I already did that. She loaned me a casket, and I've been in the casket. And, I laid there, and I looked dead until I opened my eyes and winked, but it's on tape, some videotape, if you want to buy one in advance. But no, I already did it. And I mostly want it to just not be difficult for my family. I don't want people say, oh, You know what I wish people would say when they come by my casket? Look, he's moving. No. Actually, I said that in the funeral message. But it's already done. I mean, I've already preached it. It's Terry's just cracking up here. But I'm not nervous about that. This little girl was dead. And Jesus said, little girl, I say unto you, rise. And she sat up. Now, I did that in the casket. I sat up and said, wait a minute. Peggy always said I'd get the last word, and I want to preach my own funeral. It's not a comedy. It's just, I don't want people moaning. I don't want people coming by the graveside and saying, oh, poor Don, It's not poor. This ain't it. I mean, if this was it, but this ain't it. I know what it is. This ain't it. And the turmoil that you may be in right now, this ain't it. You're going to get through it. God's going to show you. Hi, Ronnie. No. Ronnie's showing me there's 5 minutes left on the tape, and I said hi. I was waving at him. But you know what else? Sometimes we take life too serious. We take ourselves too serious, and Herod took himself too serious. I mean, he thought, I'm King Herod. I make decisions. I'll cut your head off just because it pleases the Jews. Do you know, if you read the Jewish history of King Herod, they think he was a great guy. From their vantage point, he did the things that pleased the Jews. He was trying to stop Christianity. But you read the Bible, so he stepped a little bit too far. He went a little bit too far. So being arrayed in fine clothes and driving a Zambard, what was that called? Lamborghini. I saw that guy. I thought, I wonder if he knows what people think about him. What do you think when you see something like that? I'm going to key that car first chance I get. Some people think like that. They do, They're not happy for the guy. You know what I'm talking about. But this ain't it. And if you came in here today with some hopeless feelings, you're going to get through it. And if you read the book of Acts or any of the Bible and you see that all these things took place, it didn't take place in 45 minutes, 7 years. Time goes by, and so you're going to get through it. You're going to make it. God's going to put somebody in your life, in your path, and you don't know how it's going to happen. It just will. I'll tell you this, and we'll close. I don't know if you noticed, but there's no clocks in here, not anywhere. But Ronnie's giving me signals. Tape's about to run out. That's okay, Ronnie. But I want to tell you a story. This could be the story of my life, especially my ministry. God does stuff for me that I couldn't figure out how to do it in a million years. Somebody asked me the other day in my office, said, can you tell me how you got to meet David Berkowitz and Mark David Chapman and Ted Bundy and all of these, and Carla Faye Tucker? And can you tell me, how did you do that? I'm like, I don't know. God put these people in my life. You couldn't round up that crew in a million years. But they were just there. And opened so many doors and got so much attention in prisons. And guys would say, oh, this guy knows David Bill, And people would come to church. But this ain't it. But you know, I was looking on this bookshelf behind me. I was looking at it a while ago, and I didn't see my books in there. I think they're in there, but I mean, I didn't see them. Well, I got to thinking about where are they, Mark? They've been checked out, right? Okay. So anyway, I was thinking, how can I write a book? I mean, most of y'all know me. I'm just a regular guy. I don't know what you call an author, but I am. I mean, I am now. But I went to the golf course one day, Bear Creek Golf Course, and Mark and Lauren weren't with me, but probably Carter and Keith. And anyway, we were leaving the golf course. We were putting our clubs head for the car. And up walks Dr. Frank Harbor, Marcus Lamb, and Steve Strang. Steve Strang is owner of the second largest Christian publishing place in the world. I didn't know that. But he walks up, and instead of Frank saying, "Hey, Don, I'd like you to meet Steve Strang," he said, "Hey, Steve, I'd like for you to meet Don Dickerman. He's got the most unique, fantastic ministry."
Baruch Hashem Yahuwah, welcome to another edition of Korn and Fig. Fig, I have Korn on the line. We'll get right to Bob Korn, elder at Beth Tefillah, Nazarene Israelite Hebrew Assembly in Queens, New York. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Don't forget to invite friends, family, and foes. If they need to have the demons cast out of them, I'll do that too as well, and turn them into the friends of Yah. So without further ado, let me know if you guys hear me well. You should be hearing me with no problem. Without further ado, let's turn it over and welcome the Korn Man to the broadcast. Shalom, shalom, Elder Bob. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
How are you today? What's up? What's your problem? What's up? Talk to me.
This is my problem. What's that that I was listening to prior to your voice coming in?
Oh, that was Don Dickerman, who is a very humble servant of Yah. He's in the Dallas, Texas area, and he led the Son of Sam and Ted Bundy and many other criminals to Yahuwah. And he has a very strong deliverance ministry. And Yah willing, we're going to go visit him sometime in November after we get done with our Atlanta trip. So a lot of exciting stuff happening in the ministry.
Amen. Definitely exciting.
Amen. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. So I know that Yah has put a word on your heart, as always, and we want to give you the opportunity to minister to our folks. And if I get a comment or a question, I'm not being rude or interrupting you. I just want to get them involved. They may have a comment. But otherwise, Baruch Hashem, what's Yah doing over in your ministry? Just update our listeners. If you could just tell them a little bit about, what you've been called to do and your joy, and then maybe get right into whatever word or unction that Yahuwah has put on your heart.
Amen. I thank you again for the hospitality and the openness that we've been sharing with each other, and it continues to go forward. Well, currently we're located on Myrtle Avenue in Ridgewood, Queens, 6204 Myrtle Avenue, which is a fairly busy area. And we've been doing some outreach, doing some street preaching, and reaching out to whosoever, and inviting people to come to special meetings where we can present the gospel of the kingdom, the true Habesarah, the fullness of the gospel that's not being preached by most people. So as you're aware of, when we get rolling, people kind of are their heads are spinning because 98% of what they're hearing they've never heard before, or they might even think it's contrary to what they consider to be true. So it's a challenge presenting the true gospel, and as we for our congregation, Beit Tefillah. Since that time, Isaiah 56, verse 7 has been a very prophetic concept that my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. Beit Tefillah, so the house of prayer is a prophetic fulfillment waiting to happen. That will truly be of all different peoples, all different, not feeling any reservation to be considered part and parcel to the body, as we see in the second chapter of First Peter, where whosoever compiles and comprises, we know the fullness of what that implies with regards to the houses of Israel, and I'm coming through clear, I hope.
Yes, I think you're very clear at this end. Everybody just give us a thumbs up to make sure that it's nice and clear. We would appreciate it. Go right ahead.
Okay, because of late, when I watch the show on YouTube on my television, it's been breaking up a little bit, so I'm not sure. My wife's phone can receive it perfectly good, and that's great. But so we've been hanging in there and trying to be tenacious, trying to be a presence in the neighborhood, and physical restraints notwithstanding, the opportunities that we find ourselves getting at, like I've been able to speak in a few different congregations over the years, as well as teaching in our group. So it's opportunity is a wonderful thing, and given the opportunity to share the truth of the gospel, the truth as it was intended to be transmitted without any filter of religion. It's a pure, wonderful thing, and it's an honor and a privilege, and it's very humbling to be in a position to share that. And just as a quickie, sort of a mini plug. If there's anybody in the New York area that has any interest at all, can I just give a phone number out there?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, it's area code 718-366-5282. And again, that's Glendale, Queens. Most people are more familiar with Ridgewood, which is what we are also. And we're right off of Myrtle Avenue, which is a very busy area, very frequently tracked area. So if you have the chance, so we'd love to break bread and to share with the brethren.
Amen. And I can vouch. I could vouch that Beth Tefillah is a wonderful place to fellowship and to meet others of like mind. And Elder Bob has been faithful for over 30 years or more. So if you're in the New York area, make sure to look him up, or we'll give you that information. If you have friends and family in the New Jersey, New York area, Beth Tefillah could be a wonderful home for you. Go right ahead, Elder Bob.
All right, brother. One of the things that you've been sharing lately with the Shadim and the extradition of the Shadim, you've been also going through the book of Hebrews, and I just want to look at that verse from chapter 10, which you emphasize with great strength with regards to once that you willfully have received the knowledge, to walk away from it, to just feel it's just easy to re-engage once again, that this is not the case. It's very strong, this chapter 10. Chapter 11 is the chapter of faith. Everyone is familiar with. But chapter 10 leaves there no room for messing around, because Yahuwah does not mess around. He is very serious. He takes the salvation business very serious. He takes the concept of salvation serious. And as you've been saying, a lot of people go to various messianic groups not so much to hear doctrine, to hear the genuine position of the Kahal HaElohim. They're there to exchange recipes. They're there to see the Davidic dancing and the beautiful messianic music and the dance, and there's all components to the experience. But if the true word is not really being preached, we're not hearing Torah on the Shabbat, especially, because remember the 2 tablets were given to Moshe on the Sabbath. So he emphasized it with, here we go, take 2 tablets and call me in the morning.
Right.
That this is why we assemble, to hear the word, to understand the word. There's a lot of components to a worship service, but if the word's not being preached, then we, of all people, are to be pitied because we're not doing the job. We're not. We're doing things without. We're making soup without the main ingredients. And I don't know how the subject came to food, but soup is good food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With regards, going further in that chapter, I just want to look at the last few verses that also are very sobering. I'm going to look at chapter 10, verse 35.
All right.
And this speaks to a lot of us going through hard times, which says, therefore, do not cast away your confidence, which has great reward. So our confidence in Yahuwah has great reward, eternal life, to be with him forever, beyond the great white throne judgment, beyond the new heavens and the new earth. All these wonderful things we will reap this reward if we maintain that confidence. It says, for you have need of endurance, so that after you have done the will of Yahuwah, you may receive the promise. Okay, so again, it sounds like a mathematical formula here, okay? This is what you do for this, and this is what you do for that. And then he continues, says, for yet a little while, and he who is coming will come and will not tarry. Now the just shall live by faith. In other words, our lives are exemplified by our faith, and our faith by our lives. It's walking in truth. It is how we conduct ourselves. It's what is our behavior like? And there's been so many people who are preaching a watered-down, cheapened grace gospel that I find myself addressing these subjects very often, and I don't want to come across as a broken record, but at the same time, we need to hear the truth, and it's the truth that will set us free. It is the truth. Worshippers of truth and spirit is what the eternal Yahuwah seeks from us. It says, for a little while, he who is coming will come and will not tarry. Now the just shall live by faith. But if anyone draws back, my soul has no pleasure in him. But we are not of those who draw back to perdition, but of those who believe to the saving of the soul, the nefesh, of the soul of who we are. So again, this is very serious. We are not those who shrink back and are destroyed. That's not our destiny. We need to press on. The just shall live by faith. Remember, Yahusha said, the Elohim is the Elohim of the living, not of the dead. So we live, and we live by him, and in which death is gain, where we can be with him. So our life is him. He is in our life. Our life is in him. It's intermingled with reality, not just philosophy, not just religion, but reality. And it's essential that we grasp that we are not thinking that we can cast away our confidence if we wake up in a bad mood some morning, and yet by our behavior, we may very well do that. So we have to line up with his standard, which is absolute, which we don't take this jokingly, that this is a contract. It's the Brit Chadashah, but they also refer to this as a testament. And a testament, the testator has a will which has the benefits to those who hang around long enough to receive some benefit from somebody passing away. So Messiah has come. He has established his unique offering for all mankind for all time, to have this opportunity to enter into his salvation and to walk according to it, to walk in it, and to live in it, and that our life exemplifies his salvation. Our faith is evidence to all because our behavior is the external reality of what our faith is. You can have somebody quiet in the corner there somewhere, and they could be thinking about any number of things. In fact, a lot of these mass shooters were very quiet, kept to themselves. So they're thinking about something. They're thinking about either revenge, taking out on somebody else.
Hey, Bob, I have a question. Bob, I have a question for you. You mentioned the mass shootings.
Yeah.
You ever wonder why all these mass shooters are white Caucasians in their between 20 and 40? How come you don't see Hispanics or black folks taking an AR-15, going down to Walmart and blowing everybody away? How come there's a pattern that it's always a white male, middle-aged or young, 20s to 40, someone on depression medication, someone coming off of depression medication? How come? Because to me it's inexplicable. I don't have any answer for it. I mean, I can guess about answers in the ruach, in the spirit realm, but I would like to know what your thoughts would be on that before we go forward.
Well, one of the reasons, one of the I think the components is a lot of these mass shootings are more rural. They're more in the country. They're more in less of an urban setting.
Why is that? Why is that?
These shootings are outrageous and should never be condoned under no circumstance. In fact, a lot of these young people have been left to their own machinations and have developed good relationships with the adversary, Satan, and have been dabbling, at the very least, dabbling with the occult, dabbling with Nazi philosophy, a number of crazy things.
Now, I think you hit. I think you hit on it.
When we hear these things, where and these people do it for fame, for infamy, that they can be recognized, they can get some sense of recognition by doing this thing. And so has 10 people dead. So will have 12 people dead. Then we get to the 20s and 30s, and they're horrific and all that. But then you look at the urban settings, and while we have this one mass shooting and everyone's attention is drawn to it, how would you like to live in Baltimore or Detroit, where that number is every weekend?
Right.
And I think this is the endemic racism in our society, that if it's black on black, we don't really care. Just like the things that go on in Africa really don't bother us. The blood diamonds, no big deal. The hacking away of limbs of those who oppose various brutal, that doesn't bother us, because we're not making money, we're not losing money. So the fact that this goes on every weekend, and this weekend, with Labor Day, we had an additional day, so we have a bigger tally. But every week it happens, and none of us say, why am I not outraged? Why am I outraged at certain things but not others?
And what is your answer?
We're living.
And what is your answer?
Now,
what is your answer to that?
There's a lot to be outraged over.
Okay, but what is your answer? What is your answer to that? Why when there are 20 people killed over the weekend in Chicago or Detroit, nobody cares? There's no news. It's not newsworthy. But
like I said, that I believe is where a lot of the racism really is. The racism being that, when Latino kills Latino, and this whole thing with the MS-13s, we don't really care that much. They're not so bad, whatever. But the people that they're killing are other Latinos. So when we're saying, that they're quote unquote legal, they're undocumented, but we're not going to come and arrest them. Well, the people that they're putting in risk are people of like kind. They're other Latino people, other Latino families are being butchered and tortured, and all kinds of horrible things happening to them. So it's all under the pretense of politics. That as long as you look like you're doing something good, or look like you're saying something, like for instance, Bernie Sanders yesterday made a comment about extending abortion rights to third world countries, essentially following the guidebook of eugenics in Africa. He's literally saying we need to curtail the growth of brown babies. That's the underlying message that he was making. And again, this is not a political show.
Wow.
But at the same time, we need to be aware of what's being said by people. And when people are talking about, well, we're going to be heroic and extend abortion rights to all these families over there, and but what they're doing, and then of course,
okay, so is what you're
to the Planned Parenthood.
So is what you're saying is what you're
by Margaret Sanger, who was the world-class eugenicist,
right,
who believed in sterilizing people of color and murdering babies.
Right.
That was
is what you're saying. 1 second. So is what you're saying the reason that these mass shootings get all this publicity, and the normal urban shootings, and like you said, is because of systemic racism? because white lives are more valuable than brown lives, and that the media gets all bent out of shape when white lives are being slaughtered. So, in other words, you're attributing it to the underlying systemic racism that gets everybody all crazy when white people get shot. But there's also another angle, and I agree with what you're saying. But there's also another angle. You'll notice, like you said, a lot of these white shooters who live in the suburbs have a lot of privilege, middle class, upper class privilege. They also have a lot of time on their hands.
Yeah.
And so, because they have a lot of time on their hands, they get into Nazi paraphernalia, other kind of paraphernalia. And there's a common thread, and to the best of my ability, I've seen this, is they're all into some kind of occultism, whether it's seances, devil worship, Anton LaVey, Aleister Crowley, Madame Blavatsky, whatever that idiot's name was in Russia. So there's a common thread to these white shooters, that they have enough time on their hands and they begin to delve into the occult, and that is a common thread. But you make a very good point. If they were, let's assume somebody went in Detroit, a black man with an AR-15, and killed 100 blacks and 50 Cubans, there probably would not be the uproar that there is with these suburban white shootings. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, in fact, that happened within this year. I forget what country it is. Again, I forgot because it wasn't a country that is that concern to me, to my shame. But there was a mass shooting in a shopping mall in a third world country in which, again, it was all people of color. And again, it wouldn't be so bad if these were white racists doing this because it's worse than when a white person dies. But it's the reverse. It's this ultra left which is trying to shine the light only in one direction and not giving a full. Like, for instance, we see the hypocrisy with the opioid crisis. That a lot of middle class and white families are suffering from this, and the argument can be made, and is made by a famous comedian recently, that during the crack epidemic, everyone kind of laughed at it, kind of shrugged it aside. Well, it's only affecting them, so why should I worry? And so on and so forth. When we think that we're protected simply because, we don't quite fit in to the scheme of things, and that's why when we read what it says in the book of Hebrews here, that we all better be on our mark. We better all be watching and praying.
Hey, Bob, you know what Elder Ted says? He says, comment, if Black Lives Matter is for preserving black lives, shouldn't they stump for the closing down of the prenatal murder clinics that you were mentioning, like Planned Parenthood?
And Planned Parenthoods are I forget what the ratio is, the amount of Planned Parenthood facilities, abortion clinics in neighborhoods of color. They're like ridiculous. It's almost like a 10-to-1 ratio. I don't have the number in front of me. I didn't think I'd be talking about this, but it is a ridiculously overrepresented in this, because that is what Margaret Sanger was all about. She was all about sterilizing and limiting the births of those who are less than privileged, those who are less. And this goes back to Darwin also. Darwin talked about humanity, but he talked about Europeans as being the true humanity, and all the lesser races would eventually be kind of wiped out. That it's the European that is the true humanity. When it talks about savages and such, he's talking about anyone of any other ethnicity, any person of any color. So it's horrendous that this is allowed to go on without being challenged, intellectually and articulately with statistics, because statistics are supposed to be, the hine, evidence. Like if you say something to me about the prophet Jeremiah, I say, well, I don't think that's true. And you show me chapter and verse. I go, I see it. I agree. I agree. It's there, the evidence. Hine, behold, here's the evidence. So people don't want to be presented with evidence that upsets their apple cart. Rather, they anti-fascist, but actually extremely fascist, violent, and into destroying things. They're all masked. That should be a signal right there.
Now, before you get back to Hebrews, I know you want to get back to that certainly. I began. Yahweh showed me this in the Ruach over 25 years ago. I was one of the first to preach it before there were any black Hebrew Israelites or black sacred name groups. You'll find them all over online, and they have become radicalized. They've become black racists. Anybody who's white is a devil. Anybody who associates with white people who believe in Yahusha are really consorting with Edom. So if you're not black, you're automatically an Edomite. The true Israelites are black. So that's the other extreme. But before there were black Israelites, and there's a truth to black Israelites, the point I'm trying to make. When I first started teaching this 25 years ago, and I show you those videos are still on YouTube, and I show you how most of the people, the heroes of our faith, were men of color. Whether they were dark-skinned or darker-skinned or the same skin as Israeli Sabras today. And so it was a radical teaching back then because I proved from Scripture how many of the heroes of our faith were men and women of color. They were not Caucasians. And I still hold that point to this day. But because that truth has begun to be disseminated, that most of the Israelites were black or men and women of color, now we have the other extreme. And the other extreme is anybody white is automatically Edom, as if the white man has no place in the Commonwealth of Israel. So the truth of Scripture, I want to warn everybody not to get caught up in any of those extreme teachings. I want to warn you because it's a very seductive demonic spirit. And it's the exact characteristics that Yahusha spoke about in Matthew 24 that would precede his return. Ethnos, ethni. I got that messed up, but ethnos, ethnos. Ethnics versus ethnics. Ethnos, ethnos. And so that's where we are today. So to be Israel is a privilege, and Israel consists of Joseph's coat of many colors, black, white, and brown, and yellow. Okay, so any group that tells you that anybody that doesn't look like them is not the true Israel is a demonic doctrine. It's very seductive, and you have to be very careful not to fall into that, okay? So, but that does not negate the fact that Moshe Kanichowski was one of the first white preachers to begin to teach that the original heroes of Scripture were men of color. And you could probably still find some of those teachings on our YouTube channel. And I am proud of that. I'm proud that the Ruach showed that to me and that I was, praise Yah, humble enough to receive it. So not tooting my own horn, but just giving Yah the glory. So go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, and again, the word warns us not to put any confidence in the flesh.
Man.
That Yahuwah is not a respecter of persons. So any group that seeks to identify them as being superior racially, ethnically, socially, is just barking up the wrong tree.
Man.
Even as Messiah said to his Talmudim about rulership and government is what when you judge the 12 tribes, you're not going to do it like the nations do it. If you want to be great in the kingdom, you have to be a servant of the kingdom.
Man.
So the idea of having a serving heart and seeking other people's needs, in fact, as the word says, esteeming others higher than yourself, is the servant's heart exemplified and put in action. In fact, the agape is love in action. It is giving. It doesn't seek itself first. It seeks to give. It seeks to benefit others. And that's why it's more blessed to give than to receive, because you actually probably release more favorable endorphins in your system when you give something to someone that's received with joy than as if you get something. It's nice to get something, but when you actually give something from your heart and you see that it's appreciated, at the same time, if you give something to somebody the side onto the pile of the other things, you kind of get a little resentful, and you kind of say, well, I guess that's the last time I'm going to have anything to do with them. And how much more so is Yahuwah looking to us? He wants to give gifts to men and women, and we just kind of trivialize them and not utilize them and say, well, that wasn't not really for today. It's not really my calling. It's not really my responsibility. It's someone else. Someone else is going to spoon feed me and cut up my meat, serve me. The gospel requires work. Our faith is exemplified by our works, which glorify the Father, right?
Right.
So we need to get down to business, right?
Right.
The Messiah says he works on the Sabbath. He sustains the universe.
Amen.
He never sits in the easy chair and watches the football game. He's always doing something. He's always doing something.
Amen.
And he's sustaining our lives, sustaining all things at all times.
But that's
him, all things subsist. So Messiah is always moving.
Bob,
always
that's what Yahushua was saying, remember? When he said, my Father works and I work also. So basically I did a teaching, and it's very, very poignant, is that how many Shabbat, here's like a quiz, a little bit of a quiz. How many Shabbats did the Father and Yahushua keep? Answer 1, the first one. And then since then, they've been keeping the universe in check. Right?
And the root of the word Shabbat is also the idea of stopping. He created, he came to a conclusion, and then set that day of meditation for us. For example, that's why it's the one commandment in the Decalogue, which begins with remember. Yahuwah made the Sabbath. It's up to us to now keep, maintain, and guard the Sabbath. Shomer, which is one of the key words in Hebrew for anyone to know, that we are to shomer, because he keeps and he watches over Israel. He that keepeth Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. So again, that's 24/7.
Right.
So
but the Shabbat was made.
Shomer.
Right.
We are to remember, and that's what's important about the upcoming Moed, the Yom Teruah. It's filled with reminders to remember. We are to remember, meditate on how good he is, and remember the events of his working in your life individually and collectively and through the word. Remember, Zachor, remember these things. Meditate on these things. Keep them and guard them under lock and key. That's Shomer also implies that. Not just keeping them, observing them, watching over them, but guarding them.
Now in the word Shomer, Bob, in the word Shomer, we have the root Shin Mem, which is the name of Yahuwah. So we see that the Shomer guards the name of Yahuwah, which is the third commandment. We should not break the third commandment and follow Christians and Jews who Hashem it all over the place. And then it's the same with the fourth commandment, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekodsho. So like you were saying, in that word to guard or remember, we have the third commandment, which is Shem, and we have the Shabbat. And getting back to the Shabbat, Yahuwah, the Shabbat was made for man, not man for the Shabbat. The Shabbat was made for man. The Shabbat was not made for Yahuwah. And it's a good thing that he is not resting on the Shabbat, because if he did, the planets would be crashing into each other and meteors would be destroying the universe. So the point Yahushua is making is, you guys rest and enjoy it. The Father took the Shabbat to cease, like you were saying, to cease from creation. But now he's given it to you, and he has to work all the time because he keeps the universe together. Not work in the human sense, but work in the sense that, sustaining and maintaining. So that
I was just going to say, it's a maintenance.
Maintenance.
Even monotonous maintenance in our lives. We got to take the garbage out. We got to do certain things. Not necessarily on the Sabbath, but I'm just saying, as far as the concept in our lives to maintain, we're not always moving forward. And hopefully, we're not drifting back. But we need to maintain what we have. But in Yahuwah, we have the opportunity to keep advancing, not to drift back, not to shrink back for perdition or destruction, but to keep advancing. It's a progressive faith. It's not something that is stagnant or something that's inactive. It has to be moving, just like the love, agape, ahave, are words that imply action, that imply movement, and out and trodden under by mankind in this past century, certainly the last half century, and I've been alive for it, and I've seen it. I've actually seen it. It's like that time lapse photography, when you see like a forest, you see the changing the seasons. This flower, the flowers are gone. The leaves are gone. It's winter. It's snow. It goes so fast. And I look back at my life, and I've seen all this stuff happen, and I've seen it. So when people come up to me and they talk about this, that, or the other thing, and it's like, you don't know what you're talking about. We talk from what we know. We don't talk from what we don't know. And yet we're filling the airwaves with novices. Remember, the scriptures don't appoint a novice. Don't appoint somebody who has no experience.
Hallelujah.
Don't, he's just fresh off the boat. The Jesus boat. Don't plug him in. He's not a leader. He's got to learn. He's got to apprentice. He's got to break a sweat. He's got to get his hands dirty. Who do the religious hypocrites hate more than anyone else? Am haaretz, the people of the land, the people of the connection with the dirt, with the soil. They look at them as being, I have servants to do this work. I'm busy studying. I don't have time for this. These are all low lives, literally, because they're low to life. They're low on the ground. They're picking out weeds. They're planting things. I got other people to do that for me. But why the second? And they hated the fact that here is these Talmudim of Yahusha who know more than they do, who challenge them, and who know more than they and experience Yahuwah in a way that they are envious of.
Yeah, like while the Pharisees and the rabbis were studying, the Talmudim of Yahusha were getting their hands dirty, helping people, casting out demons, bringing hope, bringing light, bringing deliverance, bringing restoration. That's right. And the religious folks were there studying and studying and studying some more. So there comes a time when we have to take what we've studied and what we've been praying about and find one or two or three lives that you can affect. Like Dr. King says, if I can change one life, my living will not have been in vain. And that's the attitude that we as believers need to have.
But in the religious world, we're so obsessed with numbers. I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to the crowd. It's like, like these pagan kings who look out of their terrace and they see the masses cheering for them and giving them the salute like Hitler. That's what we want. We want numbers. We want to have a sea of faces and then, exude the pride and such instead of dealing with one-on-one, seeing a family that needs help, seeing a woman who needs help carrying stuff home and what's going on with her and so on and so forth. To really care what's going on with people.
And the funny thing is, Bob?
that cause for concern.
Yeah,
is snap.
The funny thing is, the world has damaged our thinking so much that I've had this often. Hardly a month or 2 months goes by when I don't get this. And I even had a fellow who had autism who used to ask me all the time. He said, "Why do you care?" I said, "Man," he said, "we want to help you. We want to hire you so you can do work around the property. We want to give you, so you can make some shekels. We want to take care of, invite you over to watch a football game, whatever." And he said, "What do you care?" He had autism. He had a hard time computing. I said, "Because that's who we are." And I still get that every year. What do you care? Why you guys are not related to me? You didn't nurse me. You didn't bring me up. You have nothing invested in me. What the hell do you care? And so people are so damaged by life and by the world that when you love on them because you're following the commands of Yahusha and because your Ruach has been regenerated to try to make a difference, they're looking for the motive. They have trust. A lot of these folks have trust issues, and they can't even receive the love and the help that's available to them in the body.
Yeah.
Very sad. Very, very sad. And I get that all the time. What do you care? Or why do you care? It's not just that we don't want to see somebody out on the street without food or homeless. We want them to be home in the right place, in the right environment. So we give them a hand up and we put them among brothers and sisters who keep Torah. That's the love of Mashiach.
It is.
That's what we want to do. That's why we're here. That's what we're here to do. if you allow us to. Not everybody will. They've been hurt and burned so many times that they won't allow you to because they have trust issues.
Exactly. And they're justified.
Yeah.
There's so many people out to exploit others, many done under the banner of compassionate organizations. I mean, we're always hearing about organizations that have raised money. Now we got this hurricane and so on. We're going to have various funds, and they're not all legitimate. There are many that are seeking to make money off of this stuff. As soon as they hear the forecast, they're already plotting. They're already got their oars in the water. They're ready to go out and exploit and
Parasites.
evil.
Parasites.
Yeah.
Nothing but parasites on two legs. So continue, Bob. That was the Ruach for sure. So we can get back to Hebrews 10 if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. Again, this is a warning, and as we've talked about this before, it's for many people it's a terrifying thing to read these words, but for us it's just an acknowledgement of what we should know, and it's comforting. It's comforting to know that we're not going to be invaded by parasites, that people are going to have to count the cost. People, if they really want to be part of this, are going to have to pass the test. They're going to have to prove themselves to Yahusha, first and foremost, that their faith is genuine, that they're truly part of those that want to build and not cast away the stones. And again, do not cast away your confidence, because it has great reward. Our confidence has great reward. In other words, to have confidence in something, like you're rooting for the Yankees to win the World Series. They got all the right elements. They got all the right hitters in the pitching, and they fail. Your confidence was misplaced, buddy. And you might have put some money on it. You might have said things and boasting like their winning was going to benefit you financially or any other way. So our confidence, we think of confidence, we think of it in many different ways, but this is confidence of eternity. This is confidence above all forms of confidence, that this is so. To believe and confide, have confidence in something, means it's an intimate thing also. Because when you confide in someone, it's me between you, and by having that confidence in each other, that what I share with you will go no further, but that you in fact are going to be helping me and not gossiping of my foibles, whatever. So to have confidence is again applying that intimacy that Yahuwah has with his people, that Yada, he knows us. And Yada is a very intimate word. It means to know, but it also has deeper implications, as it begins in Psalm 139. You know me, you have known me. And that word is the same word about Adam knowing his wife. It is an intimacy that is beyond the words that are there to describe it for us. He knows us intimacy. The physical act of procreation is intimate as we're aware of in our experience as flesh and blood people, but the spiritual intimacy that he offers to us, that he knows us, that we absolutely can confide in him. He knows us in and out, inside and out. That's the other thing with Psalm 139. It just talks about how magnificent he is. He knows all. He sees all. He's eternal. He's everywhere. And the fact that we have confidence that this is true now, because we've seen him. We just haven't agreed with the gospel message in the words, but we've experienced him. We've seen our lives turn around. If our lives have not been radically changed, or even slightly changed as a starting point, if there's no change, if there's no difference in us, then guess what? We're just Yeshua fans, Yahusha fans, Yahuwah fans, and just as like we're Yankee fans. We have confidence that they're going to go somewhere. We move on to the next thing. Okay, now we'll be Giant fans. So the confidence that we have in Yahuwah is unshakable. It's unshakable because it is based on reality and truth, and it stands the test of time. It is without failure. And I remember the apartment we moved into prior to this one. It was a good apartment, and outside the window you could see there was a Salvation Army there, and there was a wall that says Jesus never fails. And I said, okay, That's something that you'd like to wake up and see every morning, that he never fails. We have confidence that he will not fail. We have confidence that he took that road, the Via Dolorosa, for us, that he suffered for us. We have confidence that he was willing to say, it is finished, not it is almost done, I can't do no more. He did it. He completed it. So we have confidence in that. And we need to confide in each other and to have that kind of confidence in each other. That's what we are, the body. He's the head. But the whole body works together. So we need to have confidence in each other and serve each other and love each other in word and in deed and esteem each other higher and speak into each other's lives, not with words so much, but with actions, that we show that we love each other, that we're there. As Guido and Roger Nelson said years ago, it's not so much your abilities, it's your availabilities. Are you there for somebody? Or are you just saying, be well with you, be well fed, be well clothed, and just be gone? I'll be praying for you. And just like how the left, extreme left in politics has turned the phrase, our thoughts and prayers are with you, into something as a blasphemous thing.
Really?
Somebody is
They wouldn't know how to pray if their life depended on it.
Help them or financially help them. At the very least, we pray for them. And that should never be trivialized. That should never be blasphemed or downplayed. Unless, of course, it's just this, a knee-jerk thing to say. Like you sneeze, what do you say? God bless you. It becomes a reflex. I'm praying for you. I'll pray for you. Shut up. Unless you mean to do that. Unless you truly mean to approach the throne of grace with a petition on your lips and a cry to the eternal Yahuwah that he is capable and willing to meet you and hear your plea.
Yes, absolutely. But here, let's go by 35. Do not lose your, we're in Hebrews, Ivrim 10:35. Do not lose your confidence, which has great reward. First of all, I want to point out that the world will reward you, but not greatly. The reward, like our lives, are temporary. So if we're looking for rewards where thieves cannot break in and steal, where moths do not break in, rust does not set in, we have to put our rewards in heavenly things. The preaching of the gospel, deliverance, things of that, the Great Commission. What is it? Do not lose your confidence. So we are serving a cause and a purpose, not only greater than ourselves, but that has great, great reward. We're not interested in temporary, mediocre rewards. But my question to you would be, can you give us a few examples of the top things you've seen in your years as a believer, of things that will cause us, certain things that will keep popping up, that will cause us to lose our confidence?
Oh, well, you hear of the tragedies, you hear of horrific things. Like just the other day, there was in the news where some guy with his truck left his baby in the truck, and the baby died, being left in the truck for 3 hours. And it's a horrible thing. I mean, it comes from lack of thinking. And we see how man keeps trying to build and create things in which our thinking and our involvement is not involved. They want to create little things where various car companies are going to have a little reminder: check the back seat, check the back seat, check the back seat, check the back seat. Or if your car is driving and it's veering into another lane, it automatically corrects that and you're in the right lane. Or you're not. In other words, we're not really building up the sense of accountability, because we're going to make machines that make us aware of what we should be doing. So even our morality is being dictated by the works and the hands of mankind rather than on Yahuwah. And so it's a dangerous area that we're getting into. And few there be that see it or can recognize it. So I'm not sure asking me
how about
would help us make us lose our confidence.
How about the confidence?
There's a lot of things that can make us blow our cool if we're not careful.
How about the confidence of
the size of the explosion depends on our individual characteristics and what we are mostly irritated by.
Bob? How about this one? I'm talking more on the number 2 level. In other words, the horizontal relationships in the body. In other words, I have seen a lot of believers lose confidence in Yahuwah and in Yahusha because a brother did this or a sister did this, or a so-called believer did that, and they transpose that unfaithfulness and those drawbacks to the Elohim that they serve, and then they wind up walking away from the faith. So I think one of the areas where I have seen, I've been doing this for 35 years, as you have, one of the things I see as because my involvement is with the family of Yahuwah and relationships in the family. And what I see is when we let each other down, and we will, it's just a matter of time, we have to lower our expectations. Our expectations should come from Yahuwah. Okay, so when a leader doesn't do things perfectly, or doesn't recognize you, or doesn't acknowledge you all the time, or doesn't butter your bread, or cater to your every emotion that pops up, and then you cop an attitude, and you lose confidence in the men and women of Yahuwah who have been placed in your life, and then you wind up transposing that attitude on Yahuwah, so that our confidence, I've seen, is lost over the years, not by putting confidence in man, but by having expectations. So when we go into a ministry or a family of believers or a community, we should have no expectations. If someone makes me a bowl of soup, that's wonderful. If someone gives me a piece of cake, that's wonderful. If someone gives me a hug, that's wonderful. But we should not have these high expectations of one another where we're deceived into putting confidence, because we will be disappointed. Our confidence should only be in Yahuwah. And I say the same thing in marriage. If you want to have a successful marriage, lower your expectations. The wife doesn't have to make you a 5-course dinner. If she doesn't forget you, you come home from a hard day's worth of work, and she makes you a bowl of soup and a sandwich, that's great. If she forgets, that's great also. We need to lower our expectations and reapportion them to the hills from whence cometh our help.
Right. But at the same time, not to disagree, but our confidence should not be blown, and we should not be overwhelmed by small things. Like, for instance, even as it says in 1 John chapter 4, is it? Love has been perfected among us in this, that we may have boldness in the day of judgment, because as he is, so are we in this world. So, if we go to a congregation and, the minister, he's talking, and he's speaking rubbish, I say, and you have every right to not pray to the Lord for forgiveness because you're not having confidence in the minister, and you should have confidence in the minister. Again, it's by the fruit that you bear. If minister is failing, we have no responsibility to stay there until he gets better, because it just might not. In fact, I'm stuck with a dilemma right now because I'm not speaking necessarily of myself, but I know of some people who stopped coming to services somewhere because of an individual who was there. Okay? Of course, that's, in other words, I hate George more than I love Yeshua.
You're right.
Basically, that position. Okay, so
that's what I'm talking about. That's exactly.
The person is now gone, so now I'm wondering if we're going to see these other faces come back again. And I'm faced with a dilemma, because number one, it's like, stating that case to them, saying they took that in order to get you back into the brethren. But on the other hand, as a shepherd, as a teacher, now that you're back here, you're in a position where I can instruct you, where I can trust that Yahuwah is going to communicate through me to that individual what they need to hear, what they need to do, and then for them to repent of the foolishness that they had been engaged in. So it is a bit of a dilemma. Do I have confidence in myself that I would do the right thing? I think at the time, if I'm in prayer about this thing, and I don't want to mess things up, so there's sincerity and there's truth being pursued, I believe that the Ruach will perfect the situation. But as he is, so must we be in this world. So the bar is high, and yes, we're not flitting around and casting, mountains into the ocean left and right, and doing all kinds of extreme things. But at the same time, expectations should be high. In other words, if somebody really disappoints you, you should be disappointed. And it's not on you that you're disappointed. It's because that's one of the things it says in Revelation when it talks about cowardice. The word for cowardice also, the cowardly will not inherit the kingdom. Cowardly also implies those who disappoint, who say, I'll pick you up at so-and-so at 8 o'clock, and all of a sudden you're there waiting, 9:30, 10 o'clock come by. So you know what? I just got a little tired, and then I realized, didn't sleep that well, so I just didn't show it. So my bad.
Right. I hate that. I'm talking.
So right. You should be upset with that individual.
Right. But I'm talking more about
has failed you.
I'm talking more about assumed expectations.
Behavior that will keep you from the kingdom.
Right, Bob.
That's a consistent mindset. Where you should be your brother's keeper, where you should be watching over your brother, loving your brother, and ministering to your brother, and you could care less really about it, then you're not.
Right.
How can we love Yahuwah who we haven't seen?
Right. But I'm saying.
Love and be faithful to the brother next to us that we do see.
Right. What I'm saying is, okay. When you're referring to making a promise, breaking a promise. In other words, that's clear. That's clear. We need to raise our expectations. When I wasn't referring to raising our expectations. In other words, if you tell me you're going to pick me up for service, you need to be there unless there's an emergency. Yeah. So we need to raise our expectations and not make excuses. But I wasn't referring to that. I was referring to presumption, because a lot of believers walk in the sin of presumption. In other words, Bob, let me tell you what. Let me give an example. Okay, so now you and I are friends, and you and I are ministering. So you're on the air. I've given you the opportunity to share and to be on the air, which is a blessing for us and for all of our listeners. So my presumption would be that, okay, now you're going to be tithing 300 hours a week to my ministry because I'm giving you the opportunity to be on the air. That's what I'm talking about. So we need to false presumptions, and presumption is a sin. Just because I'm there in a congregation or community doesn't mean I'm going to rise to the top. Like you were saying before, I got to be there 6, 7, 8 years and prove myself faithful and consistent, understanding doctrine, teaching doctrine, that kind of thing, and then be raised up. You can't presume because you know a lot that you're going to be a leader. You can't presume because you're there that people have an obligation to recognize you. So I agree with you 100%. When we agree on the expectations that we have in a relationship, though we cannot lower our standards, we have to raise our standards. I agree with you 100%. What I'm talking about are standards that are created through the sin of presumption. You see what I'm saying? The sin of, in other words, he's my pastor, and if he's really a shepherd, he's going to come over every week and clean my house. Where's that in the Bible? Now, he may clean your house, but he may not. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted that clarified. But yeah, for sure. We need to, the things that are revealed in the word, walk in love, walk in forgiveness. Yes, we need to raise our standard. Absolutely.
One of the problems with presumption is it's something that's unspoken generally. I presume this is going to happen, and if it doesn't happen, I'll be annoyed.
Right.
But I haven't spoken up in its defense or given you reason for me to presume. It's kind of
right,
and it covers the full span of experience, because we can be presumptuous towards Yahuwah. We can be presumptuous saying, "Oh, I'm saved, so he's going to allow me to do this. He's going to allow me to go cavort with a prostitute. He's going to allow me to do this, and if I die in the act, everything will be fine. I'll be
right,
playing my heart in heaven."
But that's a violation of the word, because the word says if you're joined to a harlot, you're one ruach with them. So
but you're presumptuous because once saved, always saved, and he forgives a multitude of sins, and I still love the Lord even though I'm doing this. But again, by you doing that negates your love for the Lord. So
right,
we have to be less presumptuous with each other.
Right.
That all comes down to communication, and I find a lot of the issues that happens with family, that happens at work, is the lack of communication.
Exactly.
Very often,
exactly,
people are talking at each other,
exactly,
instead of talking to each other.
And you get an attitude, and you don't pick up the phone because you're more comfortable. since you were a child being angry and resentful, and you've never bothered to fix it and deal with it. So you're more comfortable as familiar spirits, demons, you're more comfortable holding on to a presumed slight than picking up the phone and saying, hey, can you please explain to me, what you were saying or what you mean, because I'm not following you. That's the right way to do it. Like I tell my people all the time, Bob. If you don't put up a wall and cop an attitude, I can work out anything with any member of the congregation. I can work it out. If I have to bend a little bit, I'll bend. If they have to bend a little bit, they'll bend. We can work out anything. But it's the person that's hurt and wounded and says, you see, I can't trust anybody. You see, I knew I couldn't trust Sholiach. You see, because I couldn't trust my teacher, I couldn't trust the cops, blah, 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 blah. And that's when the problems, but like you hit the nail on the head. As long as you're willing to open up and communicate and do the work that is necessary to communicate those things, especially if two people or three people that are in conflict or potential conflict have the ruach, these things can be communicated and solved. So you definitely hit the nail on the head on that one.
And then what you're saying is valid in that a lot of the seeds of this presumption are sown very early in life. They become a pattern. You're disappointed, and pretty soon you're inured to it. It doesn't really bother you anymore because you expect it. That's the way it's going to be. Or you continue to be upset by it as it continues to happen. And or third option is you just assume that's what's going to happen, and you by your attitude have helped create that environment. So there's three ways of approaching that. And presumption on any one of those three levels needs to be nipped in the bud. We need to be experiencing in the now. It's like the people who are with their phone gadgets, constantly looking. They go to visit the Grand Canyon. They're looking at it through their phone, filming the Grand Canyon, instead of putting it away and just being blown away by the splendor of creation.
Yeah.
So we want to bring it down to its smallest containable way. Instead of enjoying the fullness, we insist on nitpicking. In fact, what was that in the book of Acts when Paul is on Mars Hill? What the expression that's used to describe Paul is essentially describing him as a little bird that picks its seed, that picks up its seed. Pick, 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 pick. That's how they were referring to Paul. Who's this
Babbler.
This little bird.
Babbler.
And picking its seeds, and of course, some finally heard what he had to say, and he wasn't picking its seeds. He was laying down the foundation and planting the seed. So again, presumption is a terrible thing, and we need to be clear, make clear our motives with people. With some people, over the years, I find that I over-explain myself, and they're not used to that, and they kind of get turned off by that sometimes. So sometimes sometimes in the flesh you can't win. You either have this laconic yes or no, turn away from them, others you are willing to listen and hear, and when they're kind of at a threshold, you try to cajole them over that finish line to have full revelation and full deliverance in a matter, and they're reluctant, and they think that maybe you're being too pushy or too pulley, in essence, because you try to pull them over the finish line.
Yeah, absolutely. But one thing about ministry, as you know, it teaches you a lot of things, and you learn a lot of lessons. And I've learned a lot about human behavior, just by being a shepherd. And like you said, the communication is the key. No matter what the difference is between believers, you got to be willing to communicate. Now, when love is not easily offended, 1 Corinthians 13. And so when you hang up the phone, when you don't want to deal with a person anymore, you get defensive, you shut down communication, and from there the enemy has all kind of room to work on your mind, to work in your soulish realm. So you'll see in your own ministry, Bob, I think you can see that it doesn't, when somebody wants to stop putting in the work of communicating or clarifying and not just automatically withdraw in one way or another, things can be solved. But then there comes a point where the heart is hardened, and you know something, Bob's not worth it anymore. I'm not. I don't need to call him. Or Bob's not. He's not listening to every single thing I'm saying. So he's only receiving 90% of what I'm saying. So it's just that's just the way we are. And communication is a key because it takes effort, and it takes effort. Even Yahuwah communicating with the human race through the word of Yahuwah. Did that require effort? Even for the Almighty, he had his servants were slain, his servants were stoned, his servants were sewn in half, that he might communicate his message. Right?
Yeah.
And it cost him his son. It ultimately cost him his son. This is the owner of the vineyard. Let's kill him and take over the vineyard.
Yeah.
So that communication is the key. Like even in our friendship, what's the difference between now and 30 years ago? Well, 30 years ago, we were both in the same congregation. You were an elder and I was a peon on the pews, and we were friends, but not at the ministerial level we're at today. So what's the difference? Communication, getting to know one another, spending time. It takes work. It takes effort. And that's a good pastor, a good shepherd. Like you were saying, getting involved in the lives of his people, even though he has a lot on his plate from his own life or his own family.
Absolutely. Communication is essential. It's even in a secular history of mankind, the desire to communicate and what we're able to accomplish when we can communicate effectively. In fact, that became the problem at Babel. Remember, they're communicating this plan. There's nothing that they can't do. So that was truth. That was Yahuwah's voice saying that. So he knew that effective communication can accomplish what it sets out to do. Because that's what the word of Yahuwah does. The word of mankind made in the image and likeness of him also does. That's why we need to be people of our word. And that's one of the reasons why people get disappointed and lose heart is we talked about earlier about the promises and the we're going to do this and then we don't do this and we delay this and we're not really literally doing this. And again, with regards to communication one-on-one, I prefer to be looking at the person I'm speaking to. And but sometimes, it's funny. Sometimes you'll be talking, and you can tell by the look on their eyes that they're busy coming up with some sort of reputation and not really listening to what you're saying. They're already building their own case on why you're wrong. They're not listening to your reasons why you're right, but they're building up the case against you, and so they're not even listening. So you can have two people in a room without their gadgets that are not communicating, that are talking at each other and not speaking with each other, and that's a world of difference. And what an honor that Yahuwah made us, where we can communicate. The brethren can communicate with each other. These eternal truths. Again, wherever two or three are gathered together, where His word is manifested, He's there with us. His words are here, so He is here. We're reading from these words that are holy, that are eternal. He's here. He's here in our midst.
That's right.
So we're elevating that. It's becoming who we are, and when we communicate, we're communicating these truths, and it's just Yahushua's right in the midst. He's right in the midst, and we need to honor the art of conversation, to truly listen, I had a radio show years ago called Shema, and Shema means to hear, but it also means to listen. It means to understand, to comprehend. So we just don't hear. I mean, over our lives, I live, in New York here, and there's all kinds of sounds that I hear, and I got to filter through things, and I've come to hear anomalous sounds as being the things that are worthy of my attention. In other words, the car's going by all day. I shouldn't be like a German shepherd, darting over there with my tongue out of my mouth, looking at each car that passes, because I'm used to it. But somebody goes excessively fast, or if somebody's talking to their neighbor, that catches my attention. So we're able to listen, and if we're listening, we can understand. That's what I love about the first psalm. Can we look at that for just a second?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Ending here. But the thing that I love about the first psalm, let's see. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly. Okay, so we're walking down the street, we're hearing somebody talking nonsense. Okay, who walks not in their counsel, keeps walking, nor stands in the path of sinners. In other words, now they got my attention. Now I'm standing. Okay, it said something that kind of, okay, what was that? Okay, okay, you got some literature for me. Okay, and then nor sits in the seat of the scornful. So we see this devolving situation. We don't walk in the counsel of the ungodly, nor do we stand in the path of sinners, nor do we sit with the scornful. But our delight is the Torah of Yahuwah, and in his Torah he meditates day and night. There's no room for the other stuff. We're walking past it, we hear the stuff that's going on. It's nothing worth catching us. They're talking about TV shows, and they're talking about sports teams, and they're talking about politics or whatever. There's nothing that we should stop moving, because we're meditating, even as we're walking down the street. Pray without ceasing, for this is his will concerning you. So that verse literally means that we should pray at a regular time, regular whatever. But take that in a literal sense, that we're always in prayer. We should always be sort of in the prayer mood, which makes us be more alerted to our behavior, because what does it say? We cannot curse man or bless Elohim at the same time. So again, if I'm walking in an attitude of prayer and not looking at some little chickie walking by, or somebody who might be looking at me and saying, hey, what are you looking at? What are you looking at over here? I'm not looking to get into any of that, because I'm walking straight, walking on the derech emunah, the way of truth, the path of righteousness. I'm walking forward, and I'm not allowing these other things to distract me. And it's a metaphor for life, this first verse. And it just really just leaps out at me, left it out of me so many years ago. And I just saw what damage this does and what blessings await on the other side. If we just ignore that, we have his word, and his word will guide us. His word will be protecting us. It'll be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that brings forth its fruit in season. His leaf also does not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. Hey, that's pretty good stuff. That's pretty good stuff. But the ungodly are not so. These are the ones who are counseling and are in the path, or sitting in the scornfully seats, but are driven like chaff, which the wind, the ruach, drives away. Therefore, the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment. They shall not stand. They shall be leveled, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For Yahuwah knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish.
Let me share something.
Beautiful. It is simple.
It is.
You can reduce the whole Tanakh and the Brit Hadashah with his psalm in many ways.
Amen. Let me just share something that'll help some of our viewers. One of the big differences between and that psalm says it all, doesn't it? But one of the differences between a strong believer and an immature believer, doesn't matter if you've been saved 1 year or 100 years, is what I call the distraction. Because is exactly what you were referring to in Psalm 1. There are so many distractions, especially in this modern world with tablets and cell phones. The weak, immature believers get very easily sidetracked. Okay, they get their attention on gossip, slander, he said, expectations not met, disappointments. Somebody said something about somebody. They used to go to the best tefillah, and now they're singing a different tune. It's a cult. So the weak, immature believers always get easily sidetracked. The more mature believers do not get sidetracked. Like you were saying, Psalm 1, verse 1. They're walking in their walk with Yahusha, and they're not going to stop and get sidetracked on unimportant matters, or even lesser kingdom matters, for anything. So you'll see that a lot, and I'm sure you've seen that over the years. An immature believer tends to get easily distracted. That's the word I'm looking for. Easily distracted.
But this is part of the road to maturity also, is that we see the guidelines. Even as a babe, I would see something like this, and it would speak to my heart. And I knew that I had a long way to go, but I knew there was a parameter that's being established of what's profitable to me. Because if we pursue his way, whatever I do will prosper. And again, what does prosper mean? It'll succeed, it'll do well, it'll, not necessarily in the bank account way, which is how, the name it and claim it, blab it and grab it crowd are always talking about. But your soul can prosper, your nefesh, your existence, your air-breathing existence will prosper, will succeed. People will look at you and neighbors will see by your example that, hey, this is the guy. I can always turn to Moshe. I can always turn to George. I can always turn to Harriet because I know that I can trust them and that whatever they tell me is not going to be filtered through nonsense or filtered through emotion or anything, but I can go for them for solid help, solid answer. You have a quandary, I can turn to them. So we want to prosper in the best way, and the ways that we can prosper through Yahuwah is what He offers us, as we read in Hebrews chapter 10, that what He offers us has great reward. Great reward. It has great incentive. It's like these commercials for annuities or whatever. There's great reward. There's great benefit in gold today. Gold is worth this. Tomorrow it's going to be worth this. And if you invest today, you're really smart. You're going to prosper and whatever. If we can pay attention to that kind of stuff, and that gold and that silver is going to be in the bank when I'm planted in the ground. It didn't really benefit me in the long run. So
Man.
again, what is the reward? What is the goal? The sign is the goal at which the Torah aims, as it says in Romans 10. And so he has to be the perfect. He's got to be the example. It is his footsteps that present the tracing that we need to emulate and follow and pursue. And again, is it going to be perfect every time, especially if we're young? I'm not going to say no, because I'm not going to give you license. Well, Bob said it was okay to mess up. I'm not going to say that. Everyone is going to be different. Your growth spurts are going to be at different times, different seasons perhaps, but they will come, and you don't resist them. Don't resist the growth spurts in Yahuwah. Be rejoicing in them, that your season of refreshing has come, and that you are growing, and it's something to celebrate.
Oh man, I had it's so rewarding, and we'll finish with this. It's so rewarding. We have a brother who we minister to in Brazil, and he's made himself one of our Talmidim, as have many who are listening today. And I had his wife write me. She don't speak a word of English, and she made an audio recording. My wife does speak Spanish, and she understands Portuguese. And so she basically said, I just wanted to take a minute to thank you, because my husband did not have a shepherd. He did not have a leader. He did not have an overseer. And you have been, meaning our ministry, has been such a blessing to his life. And he's accountable. He's changed. He's seeking freedom from some sins and things that have long plagued him. So she just wanted to make a short recording in Portuguese from Brazil, thanking me and thanking the ministry and all of our partners of how we were able to bring her husband under some kind of leadership and self-control, a life of self-control. And discipleship is really all about self-control. So we get stuff like that all the time, and that's what keeps us going. It's the Dr. King philosophy. If you're living can rescue or help or lift up one life, then our living has not been in vain. All right, Bob, we love you, brother.